and Administrative Committee. We'll start with the roll call. Mr. Butita. There he's waving. He just got on. Ms. Crosby?
Here.
Mr. Arena?
Here.
Mr. Hoffman?
Present.
Ms. Red?
Present.
Mr. Salgado?
Present.
I'm also present. We do have a quorum. Mr. Thompson, has anybody signed up for public comment?
No, sir.
All right, I shall omit that portion. Moving on to item D, resolution authorizing the execution of a renewal agreement with Voya Financial for stop-loss specific and aggregate coverage on the self-insured copay, POS, and high deductible medical plans. And I so move. Can I have a second, please?
Dorothy Red.
Second by Ms. Red. Mr. Hoffman, the item is not before us. I have read this. I saw that there was a fairly significant, Mr. Butita, go ahead.
All right. Well, I did have a couple of questions, but to start off, I've noticed a trend that most of our insurance now is going through Gallagher, Williams, Manning, and I understand that Gallagher is a worldwide entity, and they bought Williams, Manning, which was a local entity to start with. Has the administration reached out to any other sources other than Gallagher? I know they're huge and they cover a lot of area, but I'm just wondering what the scope of competition we're putting out there.
I would have to defer to Debbie and HR to see when the last time it was that we bid out the broker services. Debbie, can you help us with that?
Been about 10 years since we bid out, well, 9 years since we bid out our broker services, but our broker takes this to market every year. And they took it out to market, and there were 5 carriers that it went to that no one would even touch this product for us because of our experience this year.
Okay. I understand that what they're doing, they're a broker and they're contacting a bunch of different sources. So, okay. So I guess if I could follow up.
Mr. Butita, I think you raise a good point, and if it's been 9 years or going on 10 years that we've been with the same broker, I think we need to look at that. And I'm not saying that, that they're not competitive or not doing a good job, but I think it's something that we should periodically look at. So I will take this under advisement.
And I only bring that up because of a topic that we discussed in a closed session where the broker didn't quite give us the product that we needed. And I guess we'll discuss this later in the finance committee, but that seemed to be an area that's going to cost us possibly. So that gives me some concern. May I follow up, Mr. Chairman? Okay. So what we're basically looking here is at a 22% increase in the premium, which is sizable. So, and it's attributed to the high cost of the claims for 2020. So have we been able to identify any trends or the major causes that it caused that our claims were higher? Is there a way that we can manage that risk better? Have we delved into that yet?
I guess I'll defer to the HR director on that. I know we have 8 high-cost claimants, which are driving the increase, and it's. I don't see a trend. I don't see all 8 high-cost claimants are not all in one specific area. It's kind of widespread. We have to be careful how we talk about this with HIPAA, but maybe I'll defer to Deb to give a general overview of those high-cost claims.
We have, thank you very much. We have several 8 high-cost claimants, like Patrick said, are driving our cost right now. We have 3 high-dollar cancers that are going on. a potential transplant. I mean, we've had 4, unfortunately 5 employees and a spouse that have passed away this year that have all incurred high dollar claims. So, and there's really no common pattern amongst any of them.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So those high dollar claims, are those out of the ordinary for an organization our size? I mean, in any group with this number of people, isn't that something that's just likely to happen?
It is. And now one thing I want to point out, last year, we actually had a $415,000 decrease in the cost of our stop loss. And that's because we had what's referred to as a laser on one individual, because typically our deductible is $175,000, but on one individual, they placed a laser of $585,000. So we were responsible for claims up to that. So basically last year, that laser offset our cost. This year, going into 2021, they were not going to apply any lasers to our group. So last year, we took the savings in that laser. We ended up paying all those claims. So this year there is no laser and we have the increase. So basically we're back to where we were about a year ago with our premiums.
Okay, so any organization of this size
Mhm.
experiences these types of increases year to year?
That is correct. In some years, we actually have more individuals that hit our stop loss dollar amount than what we've had this year. This is always a tough renewal for us. It's always tough.
So typically we experience year after year an increase in these premiums for this coverage?
Yes. One thing we can do that we don't want to do is we can increase that deductible from $175,000 higher. But in speaking in great length with Patrick and with Steve Chapman, that is something we are not in favor of doing.
That deductible of 175 is already very high.
Mhm.
And I would not recommend going any higher than that. That's higher than what with organizations that I've worked with, counties I've worked with. That's the highest deductible I've seen. So I would not recommend going higher. I think it depends. I've seen years, good years and bad years. It fluctuates. It's a, we have a large employee group, and it's not unusual for the number of employees that we have to have 8 high claim cases. So, but I think we need to keep an eye on it and keep an eye on the broker that we use and make sure that we have competitive pricing on our broker.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Crosby?
For those that may not know, Deb, can you explain what a laser is?
A laser is basically, instead of the $175,000 deductible, they raised it to a specific dollar amount, and that dollar amount was $585,000. So basically, on any employee or dependent with high dollar claims, the county pays the first $175,000, and then the reinsurance kicks in and pays the rest. For this individual last year, with the laser of $585,000, our expense was $494,000, and unfortunately, this individual passed away. So we were responsible for all of those claims.
So this is tied in with their health insurance?
It is on top of our health insurance. So we have our health insurance, and then we have stop loss to protect us from the maximum amount that the county will have to pay during the course of the year.
Which is per employee 175,000, and then there's a aggregate amount as well.
I know a lot of other things, the county is self-insured. We're not self-insured on healthcare, are we?
We are self-insured
Yes.
on our group health insurance, yes.
Are there any other questions for this item, Mr. Arena?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that explanation on this coverage. So we're self-insured
Mhm.
or health insurance. So we, the county, pay directly people's medical bills.
Right, they go through the carrier, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield. Blue Cross Blue Shield applies a discount. And then they either are applied to the employee's deductible, out of pocket, whatever the case might be, and then we pay our share. So for the first the first $750 on each individual, that is on the employee. After they meet their deductible, the county pays 80% of the covered expenses and the employee pays 20%.
Up to $175,000.
That is correct. That is
And
correct.
this insurance covers us for that coverage after 175,000.
Correct. On anything medical and prescription, it kicks in at $175,000.
Okay, but you said last year at the insurance company's discretion, they say they pick an individual and say they're not covering, and then we're on the hook for up to 500,000.
Yes, what they get is they get claims data in order to provide us with a quote for this insurance. So they have all of our claims data on employees, dependents, whatever the case might be, and they can make that determination based on the diagnosis information that they receive.
And on how many individuals can they make that switch?
We had one last year, one.
If this is done at the insurance company's discretion, can they do it on 10? I mean, do they have the latitude to do whatever they want on that? How is that? That seems arbitrary to me.
I believe they probably do have the option to do that. I've not seen that in probably the last 10 years. I've seen them put a laser on one individual a couple years in a row, and then this individual last year.
It's very unusual to have a claimant lasered like that. You don't see it very often.
But it's typical that that ability in these policies exists. That's not an unusual.
It's
Option.
not unusual. It's not unusual to have a laser claim, but it doesn't happen very often. You don't want it. It means it's a really bad case, but you don't see very many lasers.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
How do we get away from it? It doesn't sound typical. I think with Mr. Arena, I'm kind of skeptical on this. It sounds like we're paying for insurance, but they get to pick and choose what they're going to pay for. I work in manufacturing. It's not a typical arrangement in the public sector. I understand that this is not a public sector item, but do we save that much in our Blue Cross Blue Shield is administrating our plan because we're self-insured? Are we saving that much in premiums if we had just gotten in?
Could you repeat that? You froze on me.
Did I? I'm sorry. I was wondering why everybody was looking at me like that. Would the cost of insurance, would that be equal to what this gap insurance would be? How much would our insurance go up if we covered this instead of having this above and beyond 175?
We would have paid probably an additional $1 million or more in our group insurance this year in claims.
And this is for 1.7. So does it make financial sense?
The total cost is 1.7. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me here. That's a decision the county will have to make. Most employers that are self-funded, no matter what their size, have some kind of reinsurance stop loss coverage. If you're a much smaller company, you're going to have a much lower deductible. I think it was within the last 10 years, our deductible's gone from 125 to 175 to attempt to offset cost. So that's a decision that the county would have to make whether or not they want to go uncovered with reinsurance or stop loss.
Mr. Salgado?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think those are valid points, conversations that we need to have. But I don't know if we're tied into contract negotiations with benefits insurance. So that has to be looked at, I think, but it's a good topic of discussion to kind of look at what's out there, what's available, whether we go away from self-insured process to avoid some of these things, but don't know if that's part of the contract negotiations with ASME and some of the other unions that we have on that we have to negotiate. But I think they're legitimate questions to kind of look at and scope. It's not uncommon for stop loss on this aspect of it when you're self-insured. So I think those are well comments, and I think kind of look into it. But at this point in time, juncture, I don't know if we can get a decision made one way or the other, but something in the near future, we can obviously make those decisions and see what's the outcome, the benefits versus the cost. So thank you.
Delgado, and you bring up a good point. When does our current coverage end? 'Cause
December 31st.
Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So how frequently do we do that analysis that Mr. Salgado just mentioned, whether or not it makes sense to be self-insured under this structure, or just having a typical arrangement where we're contributing something to the premium of an employee?
We haven't looked, I don't believe, at it being fully insured in a long time. I think it's probably been maybe 10 years that we had a small fully insured HMO plan. And they could rate us based on our experience. And then we get into, like you mentioned, the bargaining units. And then whenever it comes to a fully insured plan, you can think of that as off the counter, or excuse me, off the shelf. This is the product you're going to buy. And with our bargaining units, they have specific plan designs that are in place that are stated in their contracts. I mean, we could definitely look at it and give
We can look at that, Mr. Arena, but most organizations our size are self-funded.
Okay.
Their health insurance and workers' comp, because you can control the costs. And so it's something that we can look at, but
No, if you,
it's very common.
yeah, if you think it's a waste of time, then, we don't need to just do it for the sake of doing it. But I just thought for the next renewal a year from now, if it was worth looking into, but it sounds like it's not. So I think you're more familiar
I
with
think
it.
it's worth looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Who's running the wellness center right now? Is
Swedish American.
because I believe they have the court system. I would be at least interested in hearing from them, from their courts insurance, to see how it would stack up compared to what we're doing tonight. And I agree, time seems to be of the essence on this. We probably should have a plan for next year, but next year I would highly encourage administration to take a look at other options.
We can certainly do that.
I plugged in from my Wi-Fi. Mr. Schultz, if you're ready, go ahead.
Well, I think I need permission from the committee to speak.
And I'm the committee chair. Need that permission, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. My company has had a self-insured plan since 2017. And just as a couple of observations, one is that in the self-insured world, there are captive companies that you can become a participant in, and you basically are one of the owners. And we just, through a broker, Lockton, which is a national entity, they hooked us up with this very large captive company. And it was a way for us to spread our risk across and get buying power across a much larger pool of employers. And so that's just a concept that we could discuss potentially with our current broker, with a potential broker if we ever made a change. And then the second point would just be, I do think it would be wise to look at maybe the last 10 years if we have easy access to the data and just say, okay, we've paid this much out in the self-insurance premiums. What would the cost, what did we save? Basically, which was the cost benefit in terms of the dollars out of pocket for those premiums versus if we had paid 100% of the claims. And then that would at least be empowering to the administration, but also to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz, for the real world scenario. I appreciate your input. Is there discussion on this item? Ms. Crosby?
No, Patrick answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion, we'll go to the vote. Ms. Leclerc pointed out that it's now roll call, right? For everything online?
Correct, it is.
Thank you, ma'am. So we will call the roll. I guess I'll call the roll. Mr. Butita?
Yes.
Ms. Crosby?
Yes,
Mr. Arena?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Red?
Yes.
Mr. Salgado?
Yes.
And I am also a yes, so item passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Are there any other matters to come before this committee this evening? Seeing none, how about a motion to adjourn? Mr. Butita, seconded by Mr. Salgado. We don't have to do a roll call on adjournments, do we, Miss Charlotte? All right. In favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none in opposition, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Now we'll move into our finance committee meeting.
That is correct, Mr. Thompson.
Yep.
I believe everybody is on
Yes.
already, so we'll get the ball rolling here. So I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee. It is Thursday, December 17th, 2020. It is 5:51, actually 5:52 now. So we'll take roll call now. Myself, Mr. Salgado present, Mr. Schultz,
Here.
Mr. Butita,
Here.
Mr. Arena,
Here.
Mr. Hoffman,
Present.
Ms. Crosby,
here.
Mr. McDonald.
Here,
Let the record reflect, we do have a quorum. Next item is, can I get a motion to approve the August 6th, 25th, and September 2nd, 2020 minutes? Motion by Mr. Hoffman, second by
Second,
Alton, Ms. Crosby. Thank you. Questions, discussion? See none, we'll take roll call. Mr. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Butita, all right, I'll skip him and come back to him. Mr. Arena,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
yes.
Mr. McDonald.
yes.
I'm a yes, and Mr. Arena, Mr. Butita.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Mr. Thompson, was there anyone signed up to speak at the Finance Committee?
No, sir.
All right, then we will skip item D and move on to our next item, which is a resolution authorizing county contribution for the state's attorney appellate prosecutors program. Can I get a motion and a second? Motion by Mr. Schultz, second by Mr. Arena. Discussion on this, Mr. Thompson, if you want to give a little bit information on it.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a program that was established by the state of Illinois. It is for an Office of Appellate Prosecutors program, and it is funded 2/3 by the state of Illinois and 1/3 by the counties that are members of the program. We have been a member for a couple years, and this is a renewal. Every year we have to reauthorize, or the county board needs to reauthorize our participation in the program. I'll defer to Charlotte to explain if you have questions regarding what services they provide, but based on my observation and review, it's a program that I think is well worthwhile for us to be a participant in, and the state, funds 2/3 of the program, and then the member counties fund the remaining third. So I would recommend our Renewal, our participation. If you have questions about the service, I'm sure Charlotte could answer those questions.
I can just basically tell you that the service they provide is they handle all the appeals in our criminal cases, which our office does not have the staff to handle. So I believe it's 42,000 a year, and that seems to be a bargain for all the appeals that have to be handled. Civil cases we handle our own, but not the criminal cases.
All right, are there any questions regarding this item? All right, Mr. Schultz, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, Charlotte, do you have any idea how many cases that would have been handled in the last year?
I don't. I'm sure we can find that out for you, Mr. Schultz, if you'd like.
Yeah, and just the follow-up, that when I've asked the question historically, because as Mr. Thompson says, this comes up annually, whether or not this is a value to the county, that is, we're getting more than what we're paying for, the answer has always been yes.
I'm certain that's the case now, but we can get the numbers for you and for the committee.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, that'd be great. Any other questions, comments regarding this item, this resolution? All right, see none. I'll take roll call. I'm a yes. Mr. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Butita,
Yes.
Ms. Arena,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes,
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Our next item is closed session for pending litigation. Can I get a motion and a second to go into closed session?
so move.
So moved by Ms. Crosby, second by Mr. Hoffman. I'm going to take roll call on this. Mr. Salgado, yes. Mr. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Butita,
Yes.
Mr. Arena,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
All right, we will go into closed session for